In this video, we're going to talk about how to take one skein or hank of yarn and wind it into two equally sized balls. And this is important for a few different reasons. The one that comes to mind first for me has to do with my own patterns. And I talk about this a little bit in some of my tutorials. If you're knitting toe-up socks, it's one of the great things about knitting toe-up socks is that you knit the important part first. You knit the foot first, and then you just knit the rest of the cuff using all of the yarn that you have. But one hank of sock yarn will make one pair of socks, so you need to separate it into two equal balls so you know exactly how long to knit the cuff and you can make an identical sock. You see what I mean? Another thing that comes to mind, I can really only think of two really solid across the board reasons for needing two equally sized balls of yarn. You're welcome to contribute in the comments if you think of more. If you're doing a one skein project and it is a hand-dyed yarn from a yarn dyeing artist, when you're doing a project like that with hand-dyed yarn, a lot of times you'll want to alternate balls of yarn every couple of rows, because hand-dyed yarn, as beautiful as it is, you can sometimes get color pooling in your finished work. I've seen some really interesting color pooling, but not everybody wants to have that. You'll get zigzaggy stripes or kind of a pale area of your knitting, but if you alternate every two rows, that and from two different balls of yarn, that'll keep that from happening. But toe-up socks is the main reason that I always do this. Now, before we get into the technique for how to do this, I want to talk a little bit about the equipment that you see here on this table, because people have been asking me for years for advice on ball winders and swifts, and I've never had advice before because I've always just used the same breakable plastic stuff that I couldn't really recommend to anybody. But recently I seriously upgraded my stuff, and so I'm happy to tell you what I have here. This swift and this ball winder are from Strouch Fiber Equipment Company, and they're a really good company. They make really nice stuff. Everything's made here in the US. They are customer oriented, and their focus is on fine craftsmanship, and they're a family company. I'm really careful about where I spend my money, so I have a lot of information on this company. They have a zero waste policy, and they recycle, and they're super nice people. Before shooting this video, I actually called their customer service number for no reason. I just called to see if someone would answer, and someone answered, and so they actually really do have great customer service. I'll give you a link to Strouch Fiber Equipment Company in the video description field below. Also, they make spinning equipment. I'm not a spinner myself, but I know a lot of you are making your own yarn, and you can take a look at what they have. But this is the Swift, the umbrella Swift, and this is what we take the hanks of yarn like this, and it goes on the Swift, and then we use the ball winder to wind it into a cake of yarn like this. This Swift is mounted to the table, but this piece unscrews. Actually, the whole thing comes apart really nicely. This thing unscrews and can actually be attached to a different piece that's a floor base, a little floor stand, and that's really handy if you are well, it's handy depending on what your craft room looks like, how you have it set up. But also if you're going to be winding this crank on top and making your own hanks, it's nice to have it on the floor to do that. And then this ball winder is just so smooth and nice, and it just works so well. Actually, I didn't tighten it up very much to this table, which is fine. I mean, it detaches and reattaches really easily, just bringing it to the studio today. The movement is so smooth, and this is made to accommodate a really big ball of yarn, which is nice because the plastic ball winders I've been using for so many years does not accommodate a big ball of yarn. I have to break big balls of yarn into two pieces. Anyway, so I'm happy to give you the links to both Strouch Fiber Equipment Company and the Woolery, which is the retail outlet for this, because I'm really happy with what I have here, and it's like I've put two beautiful pieces of furniture in my craft room. Okay, on to the technique video. I hope I've answered everyone's questions about that. On to the technique video. You don't have to have a ball winder and Swift to get two equally sized balls of yarn, but you do have to have a kitchen scale. And I looked on Amazon this morning, and you can get a kitchen scale for as little as 10 bucks. And if you're going to be, well gosh, I use my I don't even know why I call it a kitchen scale. It's a yarn scale. I've never weighed food on this thing ever. My brand here is Tefal. It's about a decade old. It's the battery lasts forever. I think Tefal might be a good brand. I don't know. I just know this is a handy little thing that I'm glad that I have. You will need a kitchen scale, and when you look at your yarn, you'll look at the yarn label. Most yarn will come in 100 gram, well, 50 or 100 gram hanks, and you'll want to weigh the whole thing. I've already wound this into a cake, and usually, whoops, I put it on there too quick. Usually you'll find that the yarn company will have been generous and given you a couple extra grams of yarn. I have 102 grams of yarn here in this, so I know to get it equal, I'm going to need to wind it into 51 gram balls. So I'll get myself set up here with the ball winder, and I'm just going to put this cake of yarn right on the scale so I can watch it go. I can watch the number go down, down, down. I could have clamped this to the table better. That's what we get for setting things up quickly. Okay. And I'm just going to watch this number go down, down, down. And I don't know if it's this way with all kitchen and postal scales, but I watch it go down, and when I start getting close, I drop the yarn, and it'll give the scale a chance to catch up, and I can see exactly how much I have. Anyway, you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. When I get to, when it says 51 grams here, I can cut this yarn and then take my new cake of yarn off of the ball winder, and then, obviously I do not have two equally sized balls here, and then weigh each one of them separately. And they should be really close. You should be within a few feet. If your scale's working for you, you should be within a few feet of yarn. But when you're starting top socks, always start with the one that's smaller, even if it's like 1 gram smaller. Start with that one, knit your socks, and then you'll know you'll have enough yarn to knit a second sock in the second ball of yarn. Anyway, as usual, information to everything you see in the video will be in the video description field below and on my website. Good luck.